Lemon. I'm an actor out here in Hollywood, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm doing this Can I Be Vulnerable video because I found out my buddy BJ was doing this initiative and I thought I could be of help.
There it is. We're going to jump right to it. Have you been to therapy?
I have been to therapy. Recent development, something I should have done a long time ago. I think it's a stigma that we have sometimes within our community that it's like a bad thing, but I think nothing could be more opening. I mean, acting in itself is a form of therapy in that you're getting inside of your mind, you're getting inside of other people's minds, and you're seeing maybe how close or how far you are from their perspective. I mean, that in itself is a form of therapy because I think sometimes when we look at other people's minds, we have a tendency to judge them, right? But when we start taking those things on and personalizing how we could justify certain actions that other people do within ourselves, because everything that lies within another human lies within you. As an actor, it's just your job to try to find that and find the reasons that would make you take a certain action. So, I mean, I think long story short, like acting is a form of therapy. So I've been doing it for a long time, but like the formal therapy where I'm sitting down with a guy, recent development.
So what led you to seeking out formal therapy?
You know what, man? Like, I feel like there are these things that you have in your mind that are like small things in your mind that maybe things that you talk yourself out of, maybe, and you know it's not right? But you just don't think it's a big deal.
Right.
So you just kind of roll with it for years and it accumulates and it accumulates. And I think for me, it was just this thing of, I knew there were things that I was holding off for, meaning like I'm really good at convincing myself I'm not ready to do this.
Right.
I'm gonna do this when I have this. I'm gonna do this when I'm at this place, right? So for me, I mean, spoiler alert, like the thing that the therapist told me was like perfectionism. Like perfectionism is my thing.
Right.
Like I'm always waiting for something to be perfect, right? Now, as a former athlete, like that was actually a good thing because it pushed me to go further than maybe other people would go.
Right.
But at a certain point, you got to learn that it's detrimental, right? And that it's then holding you back from doing things that could be good for your life, man.
Right.
So yeah, it was really a really cool discovery for me.
Yeah, perfect your craft, perfect the playbook, perfect.
Right. You know, I mean, one of the sayings they used to say was, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Right? So, I mean, it's just something that's like ingrained within us, man. It's like, get it right, get it right, get it right, get it right. And I think I have this thing of, as opposed to like letting people, come in and help me, many times I just want to do everything on my own.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Right?
I kind of still am, like, fuck it, I'll do it.
You'll do it on your own. And I think there's something, it could be easier.
Yeah.
Long story short, like life can make life a little bit easier. Healing has affected my relationship with others in the sense that I think I let my guard down more. I do let people help, or I'm working on it. These are recent developments. But like I said, man, the perfectionism thing, man, you just gotta, sometimes you just gotta just accept where you are, be happy with it, find the joy in that, and then find the joy in others, man. But I go back to acting, man, like, Nothing has made me realize our interconnectedness more than that craft.
Right.
So as far as like opening up to people and sort of being there for people, understanding people, having people understand me, like that was my beginning.
That's funny.
Fear, I think the thing I'm most fearful of is not realizing my potential. I think there's been times in my life where I haven't realized it. Sometimes it was my fault, sometimes it wasn't my fault. But I think it's something that's carried with me as someone who's like a high achiever and someone who wants to go on conquest and like make things happen. I think it's not realizing what I innately should be able to do, or at least in my mind, what I innately should be able to do. I've held myself back by honestly the perfectionism thing. In my mind saying like, I'm not ready, you're not ready to do this yet. You don't have enough money to do this yet. Right. You're not strong enough to do this yet. You're not this, you could put a dot in all of those, like,
Yeah.
you're not to do this yet.
Yeah.
You're not blank to do this yet. That's been like my biggest deterrent,
Right.
I would say.
Okay. Your weakness.
My weakness, honestly, is when my mind, it's when like that. So there's this book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And it talks about how every person has a tennis coach within them and then the tennis player. The tennis coach never gets on the field, right? Or never gets on the court, never hits a ball.
Right.
It's just always yapping from the side,
Yeah.
right? It does nothing good. The tennis player just wants to hit the ball.
Right.
It doesn't want to think about how to swing the racket. It just wants to do it, get it in its body and realize and sort of trial by error sort of thing. Tennis coach is like, your arm's too high, 90 degrees, blah, blah, blah. So for
Swing
me,
too hard here. Down
exactly.
swing, upswing.
So as far as the question of, what was the question one more time? The question of my weakness, it would be my inner tennis coach who's constantly yapping. I'm trying to quiet him at all times, yeah.
What does it mean to be a man?
What does it mean to be a man? To be a man, I think that's a loaded question. There are a lot of things.
Let it roll.
I think a man exudes strength, not just physically, but also mentally, stability. I think at the primal level, the man can be like the man can be a provider. I think ultimately, though, I think a man has to be. I think what complements all those things and sort of is the salt or the seasoning, if you will, in the pot, is if the man can be open and vulnerable,
Right.
and can be comfortable like showing weakness. There's beauty in that, and there's flexibility in that.
Right.
It's not as rigid as the box of society tries to put us in seems to be.
Yeah.
What motivates me? I think the cravings that motivate me are, validation from my dad, who, wasn't the biggest supporter of a life in the arts at first. Like having, I graduated with an engineering degree.
Right.
So he kind of just thought like that was the move. I see it. I see your steps. So sometimes it's practical,
And
right?
dads are really practical.
And he can understand it.
Right.
He can understand that. It's something he could comprehend. Like the world in this crazy world. He's like, man, I don't understand any of it. I'm in Georgia. I'm so far removed from it. So sometimes, man, I get small victories, and when I have accomplishments, and I can sort of tell him about it.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing, because it's a self-serving ego thing.
Right.
So I call it a craving,
Okay.
right?
Sounds good.
It's like a chocolate sundae. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it ain't good
Treating
for you.
yourself.
I'm just treating myself,
treating
man. It's not
yourself. Cheat day.
necessarily good for yourself. As far as my desires, what motivates me, balance. I think, I started this journey as an artist later in life. Like I said, I went to college, played football. So I thought that I needed to go into warp speed as far as catching up with everyone who had been doing it since like maybe I was playing ball or whatever, because these were the people I was competing against.
Yeah.
So what it did was it really got me off balance, because I would just put the horse blinders on and work.
You put the athlete mentality into the art world.
Put the athlete mentality into the art world.
Like I did the same thing.
Yeah, man.
Like, head down. What's next? Grind it out, and yeah, I totally get that one.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. So I would say, man, like as far as like a desire that I have, I've had pockets of time where like my relationships, social life, all that stuff was like level 10, and maybe the other stuff suffered a little bit. Or I've had times where I was just grinded out, like I said, and like the other stuff. Or I've had times where spiritually I was more connected, I felt like. But I think as far as like a desire that I have for the future, it's like to be able to balance all of those, man. I think that's true success, man.
It's funny. I was having this conversation with myself maybe last week about similar. My relationships, when they go well, like my work is suffering.
Yeah.
Work is going well, my relationships suffer.
But you know what? The thing I've realized about relationships, man, and it's sort of my litmus test. It took me a while to understand this and really like grab onto it. And it is, you know, if I introduce you to my life, what I'm trying to do right now is already like super hard.
Yeah.
I'm working my ass off to do it. Like I'm to the brim on it. So when you come in, you either make that easier or harder. And if it's hard, if it makes it harder, I don't know how long we can get down. You know what I'm saying? We can have our fun, but I don't know how long we can truly, you know, because I'm already trying to like climb Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Right?
With no equipment.
With no equipment and no nepotism, just like all, you know, all on my own, man. So it's funny, man, like, not to say that I'm not perfect in any, I probably make other people's deals hard. I'm probably that person.
It works both ways.
In some ways, but that's always been my litmus test, man. What's most important to me, I go back to balance is most important for me. Like to achieve that, to be able to achieve that. And it's not just stuff for me. Balance is also giving.
Yeah.
You know, it's taking time to, you know, to invest in your community, invest in your family, to give back to people who, you know, you can give back to.
Right.
I mean, I would say balance, man. Healing has changed me in a number of ways. I have to preface that by saying, you know, although I just tried therapy like a couple of weeks ago for the first time, like my true therapy, in my opinion, began when I became an artist.
Right.
When I got into my first acting class.
It's giving your truth.
It's giving your truth. It's cathartic. Particularly when I started off in a Meisner school, so we were doing, you know, these improvisations, and you get to use your own stories, man. So it was very cathartic for me to get stuff out. Like as far as how it changed me, I think if you look at, you know, 21-year-old JR, who's just a football player, you know, student, you know, thinking about NFL, all that kind of stuff. It's a cat who was having fun and was doing his thing and was living large and all that kind of stuff, but he wasn't as full of human as he is as an artist. There's parts of like my humanity that I wasn't tapped into. I remember times like in that world where I wished I could cry. Like I couldn't.
Yeah.
Like not even like because someone was around, like even by myself.
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't like physiologically like get myself to cry. Like there was some kind of emotional block. So that's kind of what I mean too when
I get it.
like now you could just tell me, I could see a little bunny rabbit going like, God damn. Healing is vulnerability. Healing is life-saving. Healing is powerful. Healing is strength. Healing is interconnectedness. Healing is air. It's oxygen. Growth is necessary. Growth is red alert. Growth is power. Growth is scary. Growth is humbling. Growth is educational. The things about my dad are not that I was never good enough. It was just that I chose a trail that wasn't on his list of trails, right? So there was this sort of, you know, you made your bed, now you can sleep in it type deal going on, where, you know, like my journey in football is very formative with me. Like I was you know, top 5 running back in the country, had 45 scholarship offers, the whole deal, man, and your head gets big with that. Now I had a dad who was purely satisfied with the educational opportunities of different different universities. So for him, I ended up going to Stanford. Like Stanford was just, that's where you're going. Like it's not even it's not even a question. Whereas me, like a blue chipper,
right,
you know, in the South, in Georgia, you know, in football land, I'm like,
SEC, baby.
Yeah,
What you mean?
But honestly, I committed to Miami.
You at the time was
That was was the whole, that was on the come up at 01, 02.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, my litmus test for university was, and this is like a whole nother story, but in Georgia, I think the thing that made me want to become an actor more than anything was like the sort of racial divide that I was exposed to. Particularly like my high school years, middle school, high school years, where I went to this school that was kind of like on the border of Atlanta and Georgia, if that makes sense.
There's ATL, the city.
You see what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
But outside of the city.
So we had like, city kids from like College Park, South Fulton County, and then we had them mixed up with like, more rural kids with jacked up pickup trucks and 100 wheels and the whole deal, Confederate flags on the front of their truck.
Yeah.
So we just had this thing. Now football, like being like the star athlete in my little town, like gave me a pass to really hang out with whoever I wanted to.
Right.
But I saw friends on both sides like really be affected by that, and ignorance turned into like a innocent ignorance of just not knowing, like how to speak to another person, turned into, well, I don't like him anyway, which then turned into like our cafeteria lunchroom looking like it was literally segregated, right? That affected me in a big way.
Right.
So for me in college, it was all about going to a team where the whole team was like, where are we going after?
Right.
Not the black guys went one way and the white guys went another way. Miami and Stanford were really the only two schools that I experienced that were like that all the time.
Right.
So that was sort of my litmus test. My dad's thing was obviously academics.
So Stanford.
Yeah, but when I went to Stanford, the coach that recruited me to go there ended up leaving after my first year.
Right.
And it just sent our program into this like really turbulent deal where we just literally just went down for the next like 4 or 5 years, and it affected a lot of guys, me being included. Up until the last year, we got a coach who just really just had it out for me. I ended up, starting and doing my thing or whatever, but I remember getting hurt, like pulled a hamstring, soft tissue injury at the beginning of the season, what maybe missed some games. Right. My draft score I just saw it plummeting, man. And I say all this to say that I blamed my dad, or I at least like pulled him into the conversation, because I knew like football didn't really matter to him.
Right.
It mattered in a big way to me, but I knew it didn't really matter to him. So when it started to not go as well, I wanted him to feel that with me.
Yeah. Yes.
And what I realized, it took me years to realize, and we had a conversation about it recently, it took me years to realize that he was sympathetic about what was happening to me, but he wasn't empathetic. And I knew it, but he would say like, I'm with you, but I knew, he was sympathetic about it, but it didn't really matter because my son went to Stanford. And my son got a Stanford education, so like everything's perfect. Everything is still peachy. Because he would have, every time we would talk and we would talk about Stanford, he'd be like, man, that was such a great experience. The parents, man, they were just, because he would come out once or twice a year, be like, the parents, man. And I'd be like, Dad, man, there's a whole lot of in-between time I've been experiencing. You're not really feeling me on this. And I held that man for a long time, and it sort of trailed into my acting where he didn't, really believe in the dream of it. I carried that football thing to it. So when I talk about like, showing my dad, like it's bigger than just him not believing in me as an artist. It was more about like, it goes back to that other journey also. That little bit of validation. But I would say on vulnerability, becoming an artist has been one of the best things I've ever done with my life. It's been very challenging, it's been very hard, there's been ups and downs, there's been constant grinding. But as far, I think what attracted me to it was that I knew it was going to open me up as a human, like in its pure sense. Right. Now, once you get into the business and all other stuff, that's like a whole nother deal. But in its purest form, right? When you're just in those classes and when you're just learning, you become wider. Right? You become a wider human being. You become more understanding. I think it's why, when people say, why is Hollywood so liberal? A lot of times it's because hey man, we're used to not just intellectually putting ourselves in other people's perspectives, but we actually empathetically try to find that within ourselves, and we come to believe that shit we could do. If you can play a part, it just means that you then believe that it's inside of you to be able to take these actions. You may not live from that. It may be dormant inside of you, but you found that.
And you're able to portray that.
Yeah, so it
accurately.
Because you're not even portraying it. You're just living your version of it.
Exactly.
Right? So it takes like the looking down thing away, and it brings people to a level thing where you say, shit, you know, we all have the capacity to do whatever.
That's like
any other one of us
what's that
has.
actor that he always plays the racist cop, the older guy. I can't think of his name. I can see his
Which
face.
guy?
He always says, I can't think of his name. He's been an actor a long time.
Yeah.
Always plays the bigot, the racist. He's really good at it, but he's very, very nice man.
Right.
Extremely nice.
Yeah.
One of the nicest guys on the planet. Like,
yeah.
But then he plays these characters when they're racist, and it's like, I'll shoot you on sight. But that's not him.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he's been able to open himself up and play a character as vile as that.
Yeah.
He's done some nasty things, but outside that's not him. So yes, I can see why Hollywood would be liberal, because
we're used to opening up our perspective, man. Like, I think when you do that, you just become wider. It's not an academic thing, it's a heart thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's the power of vulnerability. If we talk about vulnerability, it's powerful. Like, it can, if there's anything that can heal what's going on in our country, it's vulnerability. It's opening yourself up. It's opening up your empathy to understanding the lives of others, the perspectives of others.
Right. Closing statements, man.
Closing statement.
Talk to the people.
What am I saying to the people? What do I want to say? What do I want to say? I think I want to say to everyone, just based off of my own experience as of late, sort of challenges I go through. We talk about vulnerability, like what lives in me lives in you. So I would say, try to work to find, peace in where you are right now. Try to work to find joy in where you are right now. I think for those of us who are actors or artists, nothing can be more detrimental to your art than trying to be perfect, right? Because there's beauty in inaccuracies. There's beauty in, inaccuracy is the wrong word. There's beauty in imperfections, right? And that's not just a physical thing, but it's also like an internal thing, right? Our imperfections sort of define, where we are in life at a certain point. And that's a beautiful thing, because other people will resonate with that place in life, because maybe they've been there in their life. So I think it's a beautiful thing to try to accept yourself for where you are, like live from that, still work for where you want to be, and go get your goals and go get your dreams. Something I would like to tell everyone is that there's power in imperfection. I think one of the things that I think maybe that we battle with as artists or as actors or models or whatever it is that you're in, out here, a lot of my friends, our circle is that out here, is trying to like fit some standard, trying to fit some prototype. And the truth is, nothing could be less artistic. Like, perfectionism kills artistry, because it's not truth. Like, we all have our things that we feel like aren't right, but the truth is that like we're just right. I would say, as far as gratitude is concerned, I think gratitude is one of those things, like nothing's more important than your mindset. At any given point in time, I try to touch on my mind like every morning and put it in the right place to take on the day. But I think a lot of times we look at things that we want as far as gratitude. I'll be so grateful when I get this. I'll be so grateful when I get that. And I think that sometimes we can go backwards with that. right? And say, wow, I'm so grateful this happened. I'm so grateful for this experience, whether it be like personal, whether it be in your work life, whether it be, just about you in particular. Not something that you got, but something within you. Like I'm so grateful for my strength in this moment. I'm so grateful for how loving I was in this moment. I'm so grateful for how understanding I was in this moment. I think it's something that can really open all of us up. We're in a turbulent time right now in our country, really divided. And I think that the more understanding and open, honest we can be with each other, the better.